Hi, welcome to your lecture on organic compounds, also known as carbon compounds. When we use the word organic in biology or chemistry, we are referring to things that have a carbon backbone or are carbon-based. These four macromolecules are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Carbon is the backbone of all these macromolecules because of its unique bonding capabilities. Carbon has 4 electrons in its outer shell, and if you remember from previous videos, the outer shell holds 8 electrons total. So carbon can bond with up to 4 different atoms. It can have 4 covalent bonds. Carbon can bond in chains or in rings, or other atoms can attach to carbon backbone. So on the left there, you have a chain of carbon with a bunch of hydrogens off of it. Like when we made our lipid, the saturated fat. When you made that in class with the molecule building kit, you made a very similar carbon and hydrogen chain. The drawings on the right, everywhere there is a bend, that represents a carbon. So it would be just like our model kit, but everywhere there's a bend, that would be carbon, and then the ones coming off of it, the little white balls, are going to be the hydrogen. It says life's macromolecules are polymers. Polymers are made of small units called monomers joined together. Remember that we've discussed that polymer means many units and monomer means 1 unit. So it makes sense that in order to get many units, you have to join together a lot of 1 unit. The pictures that are being shown, the top picture is dehydration synthesis. And it says that at the bottom, in order to join 2 molecules together, you do it through dehydration synthesis. So you lose a water to make a bond. The bottom one is hydrolysis. Hydrolysis is the process of adding water to break a bond and go from a polymer to smaller units of monomers. This is a closer picture of the dehydration synthesis and hydrolysis. If you break the words apart, dehydration is the loss of water, and synthesis is to make something. So you are making something, you are making a polymer, you're making something larger, you're making a bond by losing water. You just take out 2 hydrogens and an oxygen, and then they will bond together. Hydrolysis, on the right, is the opposite of dehydration synthesis. You add the water back in to break the bond. We talked about this in class with the glucose molecules. It also happens with proteins. It happens with the lipids. This is how things are formed. If you break down the word hydrolysis, hydro is referring to adding water, and lysis is to break apart. So the first macromolecule are carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are literally hydrated carbon. So remember that for every carbon atom, there is a molecule of water. It creates a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. So 1 carbon, 2 hydrogen, and 1 oxygen. So the carbs in your diets are actually sugars. Most sugars have names that end in ose, O-S-E. Monosaccharides are simple sweet sugars. The monosaccharide most used by your body is glucose. Table sugar is sucrose, and it's a disaccharide of 2 simple sugars. This picture over to the right has a glucose molecule and another glucose molecule. It's again showing dehydration synthesis. You're getting rid of 2 hydrogens and an oxygen, and they are bonding at the remaining oxygen that's connecting together, losing a water and making a bond. So the 2 separate are monosaccharides, and once you bond them together and there are 2 bonded together, that's a disaccharide. Polysaccharides are polymers of monosaccharides. They are not so sweet. They are complex sugars like starch, glycogen, cellulose, even chitin. And polysaccharides, if you remember from our carbohydrate lab, monosaccharides were things like honey, fruit juice. Our disaccharide was your normal table sugar. And the polysaccharides were like cornstarch and potato. Starch is a polysaccharide that is found in plant cells, like potatoes, and it is a storage of the excess sugar. It is easily digested by our body. It's found in pasta, potatoes, rice, bread, etc. So when they say something is starchy, they are talking about these globules of polysaccharides that are stored for excess sugar for energy at some point in time, and our body uses them for our energy when we ingest them. Cellulose is also a polysaccharide, but it is used for structure, not energy. Cellulose composes plant cell walls. Remember, animals do not have cell walls, and it is very tough. It's indigestible, and it's used to help give them structure to stand tall. So that was the reason in our lab that the paper had a reaction to iodine. The paper turned black because iodine shows when something is a polysaccharide. It has a reaction to polysaccharides. So when you put it on paper, the paper turned black because it is from trees, and trees have cell walls, and those are made of cellulose, which is a polysaccharide. Lipids are fats. They are also known as triglycerides, oils, waxes, cholesterols, phospholipids, and they are all nonpolar and hydrophobic. If you remember from our water lab, the oil and the water did not mix at all. The oil sat on top. Triglycerides are the most common type of fat in your body. Oils, like what we cook with here in the picture, and butters are different. They're saturated and unsaturated fats. Wax, the stuff in your ears, also beeswax, those are fats. Cholesterols and phospholipids. Cholesterols and phospholipids are in our cell membrane, so every single one of our cells is surrounded by a phospholipid bilayer that is the cell membrane, and it has different cholesterols embedded within that bilayer. There are many benefits to fats, having fat in your body, and they are that they store energy. If you run out of carbohydrates, you can break down and use fats. They are insulating. So if you see the penguins, they're animals that live in very, very cold environments, tend to have a lot of fat for protection from the elements. So they protect your organs. We have a fatty layer in our abdomen that protects a lot of our important organs that are not protected by bone. You know, our most important organs, the heart and the lungs and stuff, are protected mostly from our rib cage, but we do not have protection over, any of the organs in our abdomen, and we have a layer of fat to protect those. They also help with buoyancy. That is your ability to float in water. This is a picture of a triglyceride, and we had to build these in class. These two chains, the middle chain and the one on the left, are saturated fatty acids. If you remember, they are all single bonds and filled with hydrogen every place possible. And the one on the right has a double bond. It has a kink in it and it's bent, and so that's an unsaturated fatty acid chain. The top portion with the 3 carbons is your glycerol. So this is where it gets its name, triglyceride. It has a glycerol up top in the orange, and then the little tan ones are the 3 fatty acid chains. So tri for 3, and glycerides because they're attached to a glycerol. So this is the most common type of fat in animals, including in you, and it's made of 3 fatty acid tails attached to a glycerol backbone. Saturated versus unsaturated fats. Saturated fats are on the left, I've talked about it a couple times, but they are carbon chain filled with all hydrogens, as many hydrogens as possible, and they're going to be solid at room temperature like butter. The unsaturated fatty acids on the right have double bonds that causes them to bend and kink. They're not crowded, so they stay liquid at room temperature like canola oil, vegetable oil, olive oil. Saturated fats are mostly from animals, including butter, bacon grease, lard. Most of those are solid at room temperature. That's why if you're cooking bacon, when you have all that fat left over from the bacon, you should pour it into a mug and let it sit and harden at room temperature, and then throw it in the trash or use it to cook with, as opposed to putting it down your sink drain. That will then cool and harden in your sink drain, clogging your pipes. Unsaturated fats are from plants, and they're referred to as oils. Not all saturated fats are from animals. Coconut oil is actually fully saturated, and that is obviously a plant since it's from coconut. Phospholipids are extremely important because they're the main component of your cell membrane. So it says, that's right, no fats, no cells, no you. This picture in the middle is a phospholipid. So it is two fatty acid tails and attached to a phosphate group. And it looks like a little circle with two tails coming off of it. Your cell membranes form a phospholipid bilayer with the phosphates on the outside and on the inside of the layer, sandwiching the tails in between. The fatty acid tails are hydrophobic and they're scared of water. The cells are full of liquid, and there's liquid on the outside. So the tails hide on the inside, and the phosphates go up against, attached to the water, or the liquid inside and outside of the cell.